sometime in the next few decades, humans will leave this planet to live in another world.
That means that some people in our life can be the first Martians. How about that?
We're finding out a lot about how to explore Mars in our station. Over 1,000 people from over 40 countries have actually participated in one crew or another.
It's the grandest adventure I could possibly imagine. That is, for me, the most important reason why we should pursue the establishment of life on Mars.
If we go to Mars in our time, 200 years from now, there'll be new branches of human civilization on Mars.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining into episode 2 of Red Planet Live. I'm your host, Ron Craig, and with me today, we're going to be talking with the crew, Crew 245, who actually just recently finished a mission at the MDRS station in Utah. So actually, for those who don't know what that is actually the Mars Desert Research Station. And what they do down there is what we're going to talk about today. So with me, we actually have the crew that and we actually have almost all of the crew with us today, which is fantastic. So I'm going to start bringing them in. So first off is Dylan, Commander Dylan. How you doing?
Hey there. Hey, thanks for having us, Ron. Great intro, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I wish I could take any credit for it, but actually all I could do is actually add and click play. But I like to say that was like a big part of it. So yeah, I try to do that. So what I'm going to do before we actually get into the introductions and get everybody to kind of introduce themselves, I'm going to bring everybody on. So let's see if we can actually fill up the screen. Let's see if we can break the feed. So we're going to get everybody on. Hey everyone, how you doing?
Hi, how's it going?
Great, fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you all taking some time out of your busy schedules this evening. I know a lot of you are actually, whether you're in postgrad, working busy full time, in the fields of choice, and of course, very exciting fields. And of course, I think a lot of that has to do with why you're down in the actual station, is to kind of hone your skills and really put that into use. And I think a lot of fun and challenge and everything. And of course, that's what we're here to talk about today, is really what you went through. So what I like to kind of start out doing is kind of going through, and everybody can kind of introduce yourself, talk about your role and the part that you played actually as part of the crew. So I think Dylan, obviously let's start with you first. You're also first on my screen. So if you want to kind of take it away, introduce yourself and let us know kind of what your role was actually at the station.
Sure. My name's Dylan Dickstein, and I was the commander for Crew 245. And I had a fantastic opportunity to get this team together, and we applied originally as three of the 6 of us were from the original crew who applied about 2 years ago, and then naturally how these things work, not everyone can participate from the original group, but we end up getting three of us here were additions from the very beginning of this calendar year, and it really made for an amazing group of 6. Personally, I'm a PhD candidate at UCLA. I did my undergrad at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, aerospace engineering for all my degrees, and now I'm finishing up the PhD at UCLA. Former internships at Virgin Galactic, United Launch Alliance, SpaceX, and the Aerospace Corporation.
So you're not busy at all. Is that what you're saying? Like, you look like you have a lot of free time on your hands.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Ron.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it definitely makes it even more appreciative that you could actually show up today. And I think we saw that with some of the scheduling and the challenges to get all of you together. The fact is you are all extremely busy. And, so I think it's been fantastic. And I think, what we'd like to do before we move on to, we'll go through kind of down the line. But if we could actually, even if you can for me, Dylan, because one of the crew members couldn't make it tonight, and that actually is Shayna. And I wonder if you could actually maybe give a little introduction for her, if you can, and kind of what her role was in the mission, just because she's not here to obviously talk on her behalf.
Yes, Shayna Hume, really, I've known her for years now, as first introduced through the Matthew Zakowicz Fellowship program. and she's an incredible engineer from CU Boulder, doing her PhD there, and she was our executive officer. And she supported me in a lot of ways and really helped with a lot of the logistics in the team.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's go down to my right. So, crew engineer, how are you doing? So, if you could actually introduce yourself and let us know what your role. I know your roles are kind of there, but if I could get you to kind of go through it and kind of explain what you really were there for. What was your kind of primary purpose on the team?
Yeah, for sure. First off, thanks so much for having us, Ron. I think we're all ecstatic to be here. So my name is Shravan Hariharan, and I was the crew engineer on MDRS Crew 245. A little bit of my background. So I finished my undergraduate studies at Georgia Tech. I studied aerospace engineering with a minor in Earth and Atmospheric Sciences. So how to get to space and what we do when we get there. And now, just in about a month, I'm beginning my graduate studies at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And there I will be studying in situ resource utilization. So how to make oxygen for human use on Mars. So in this crew, I was the crew engineer, which meant that I was responsible for a lot of the technical operations of our system. So this meant monitoring things like our water consumption, heating and power, internet, and anything that might move. So that includes all of our spacesuits and the components within them. So a lot of it was preparation, and a lot of it was an operational mentality, just being on my toes to make sure that when any kind of problem would arise, that I could help the rest of the team in terms of fixing it, finding a solution, and then moving forward with it. So it was great to adopt that operational mentality for the duration of our mission.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you very much. So next in line actually is Alex. If you can actually tell us about yourself and what your role was.
Yeah, Ron, just want to say thanks again for having us on the show. And yeah, my name is Alex Koltrup. I was the health and safety officer for the mission. My background is in aviation science, and I later transitioned to space and microgravity human factors. So my background in human factors and safety is why I wanted to be the health and safety officer for the mission. So what's involved with that day to day at the station is making sure safety protocols are followed, encouraging the crew to follow safety procedures. We tried very hard while we were in the mission to replicate as many operational procedures as we knew of from real space missions. So pre-EVA health checks were mandatory. And even though everyone passed their health check every day, I did have the power to say to someone, you're not fit to go on a spacewalk today. Other things that were involved was, we had some weather events, so I had to make some real-time decisions about how we should respond to those, just general safety response. My background in human factors, which is the intersection of engineering and human cognition, I focus more on the psychological side, so I was very interested in learning about how being confined in a small space with a crew like this might affect our mental health. So my crewmates can tell you that I interviewed them fairly regularly throughout, learned some interesting things, and I think that gives a pretty good overview. I guess I didn't mention my where I had my education, which you guys did. So I'll throw in that I did my undergrad at a community college in California where I studied aviation science, and then I transferred to Florida Tech where I did my master's in microgravity, human factors, and I also did an emphasis in space policy while I was there.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's amazing with now the stint that you actually had there, the duration of your was 2 weeks, right? You were actually on a 2-week mission. So I can imagine that, how applicable, the mental health challenges could be within a confined space and actually being together. I think we've all, I think back to a show I used to love watching. I think maybe you've all seen Big Brother. And I think that was a similar social experiment, but of course not science-based. It was, I think more pop culture style. But I think that it shows that there are some challenges actually when you're now. Of course, you guys are all well knit. Like you're close. Like you were. I think a lot of you were friends outside of the crew. Like Dylan, when you put the crew together, you actually knew each individual person you picked. I think, did you not?
The original crew of 6, I knew everyone. However, when when three were not able to participate, actually, of the three here that I'm referring to are Olivia, Alex, and Shravan. And so actually, we're dominated by the people who today, who the people were that joined earlier this calendar year. And
the Clutch crew.
that's right, the Clutch crew. And I had known Olivia through UCLA. However, Shayna was actually the primary connection to Alex and Shravan, both of who were connected to several of us through the Matthew Zakowicz Fellowship Program. But I had actually never met Shravan or Alex in person, and outside of me, I think many of us had never met.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. So Olivia, actually, if you want to kind of take the reins next and kind of let us know about your role and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure, definitely. And thank you, Alex, for being our health and safety officer, keeping an eye on our physical and mental health. I'm sure with like all the fun things that were going on, all of our excitement and the ATVs and everything like that, we were much of a handful. So just hearing you introduce yourself, I was like, wow, she really did a lot for us while we were in our mission. So I was the crew scientist for our mission. So I'm the only one in the group that's here currently, as well as including Shayna, that doesn't come from an aerospace background, which is okay. I think it only added to my my experience on this mission. But I helped advise and perform analyses on any of our scientific endeavors. Namely for me, I grew a hydroponics garden to kind of model vegetable growth as it would go down in an actual like Martian civilization. I had some talks with Julio as well, informing his experiment, and I'll let him talk about that. And I performed the genomics analysis on mine and Shayna's extremophiles experiment, where we were searching for life on Mars, collecting soil samples, performing some 16S RNA sequencing, and seeing which species we were able to isolate in those environments. Like I said, my background isn't in aerospace pretty much at all, really. I spent the last year working for California State Parks with their natural resources department. I was on their environmental science team. I was helping them do field work, invasive species control, wilderness management, things like that. And actually in the last month, I started a new job at Caltech, working in a LNC RNA lab here in one of their newer buildings. So no engineering or rocket experience for me at all, but it's happy to be a part of the team. It gave me a chance to grow as a scientist, and definitely the confidence I needed to start applying for this new job that I ended up getting. So everything works out in the end.
Oh, that's actually awesome. It's also encouraging to hear that, I think, one of the things that when we look at, how to get started into the space industry or aeronautics or et cetera, it's not everybody actually has a traditional path and maybe following a linear, trajectory into this field. And then even when it showcases here for the analog mission is that you may not necessarily be working in the exact area that you've gone to school for, that you even have, necessarily maybe your passion for. And, it's something maybe you find as you go there and as you take on a new challenge. And I think that's very encouraging for everybody who may want to take and look into getting into space and getting into science, saying that, you don't always have to have this textbook academic, path laid out in front of you to say you have to do certain things. And I'm actually thinking of doing an upcoming show about that, actually, is about, breaking into the space industry and in untraditional ways. And I think that it's very encouraging to hear that, actually. So I'm very excited to hear.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just one type of person they need in space. We need astronauts, obviously, but we need mathematicians, engineers, we need scientists, we need people that have interpersonal skills, So if I can teach you anything, it's that you don't have to be 100% aerospace engineering. You can have, a desire to learn more, and that can be sufficient.
Yeah. Oh, it makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Julio, if you can go and introduce yourself and your role, and tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you, Ron, for the wonderful introduction, and also my crewmates' wonderful introductions themselves. They're truly phenomenal individuals. My name is Julio Hernandez, and I was the crew botanist for our expedition. My educational background started in the community college called San Jacinto Community College over in Webster, Texas. And then from there, I went to a 4-year university at University of the Pacific and got my engineering degree, my bachelor's engineering degree in mechanical engineering, as well as a master's degree. And then from there, I'm currently at Purdue University, pursuing a aerospace PhD in Dr. Tyler Tallman's TNT labs. And my area of work and research and interest pertains to sustainability, where in the engineering world, and the research that I'm doing right now is about it pertains to protecting engineering assets through structural health monitoring. But my interest in botany also is related to the sustainable aspect for the human factor of space exploration. When we can protect our engineering assets, such as the spacecraft, satellites, and equipment up in space, now we have to sustain our presence, our human presence in space, so that we can have a very long duration and successful space program and eventual permanent settlement on Mars.
No, that's awesome. And, I think, for sustainable, exploration of space, I think is so important. I think we're even seeing that here as, as we stretch the resources of this planet, thinner and thinner and thinner, that, we have to always keep in mind that, we have to make this sustainable. We have to make this reachable and achievable by everybody. And I think it's such an important aspect. And I think, all of you actually had such a key part in this mission. Now, one thing I'd like to really kind of jump into in the beginning is, I think there might even be, some misnomers out there thinking that, this is kind of like, sleepaway camp, that you're kind of just going somewhere to have fun. And I think that for those who don't necessarily understand or know what an analog mission is, what an EVA is, I think, we kind of have to maybe define some of these terms, but you weren't actually going there to play. You were going there to work hard, to take on very extreme challenges and do a lot of research. And I think that it's something that we should talk about, that, this isn't just a bunch of people going to play in the dirt for a couple of weeks just to have some fun. You actually put a lot of work. There was a lot of effort. And I think, maybe, if someone wants to maybe feel this, volunteer, to kind of speak to that point. I mean, really, what is involved? You get there, you walk in, you get off. I don't know even what you got off. Did you get off the bus? Do you, how did they even get you there? So maybe if somebody can walk me through of what it was like, what was the experience to kind of getting from where you are now to getting to Utah, to getting, into the habitat. What was it really like? Like, what was the experience like? So maybe, Dylan, do you want to even maybe start and just kind of say, what that experience was like to you?
Sure. It very much is a training ground for a lot of us. Not all of us want to be astronauts per se, but for a few of us at least, this is a prospective astronaut training ground. It's a place where we can test our own skills and see maybe where our deficiencies are, because in the end, this is one of the more similar environments you can get to on Earth for someone trying to imagine what it'd be like to work as an astronaut in space. And then beyond just what it'd be like to be a prospective astronaut, it's also great from an isolation standpoint, learning how to be self-sufficient, learning how to use your resources wisely and think through your living situation, and is also very important, interpersonal skills, being able to live in isolation with a number of people in tight quarters, and learning how to get along and solve problems this way.
Yeah, and I think that's fantastic. And I think that, and it's not so much just being in tight quarters in terms of, being in the habitat, because, I think the comforts that, let's say, that might exist in a habitat. Now, I'll lose that. I'll quote that, comforts. Going to Mars, if you're actually going to go on Mars, if we're looking like a 5-month trip, in a very, very tight quartered, ship going there, of course, with zero gravity and, all of that. I mean, I think that this is a precursor to really understanding, how to do that. Now, I mean, maybe at some point we're going to have habitats. I'd love to see MDRS actually have a orbiting habitat where they actually put you up in space, I'm sure that would go over really well, I'm sure, for a lot of people interested in being an analog astronaut. But I think that for the most part you can simulate a lot here on Earth. And I think so maybe as I move over, I think, Alex, if I could ask you, because especially in your role looking after the health and safety and the mental aspects, what was it like from your perspective? And even I would even say take this further, from your perspective of observing the rest of the crew, of how did people handle that? How did it go? I'll just leave it at that.
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking. So it's obviously different with each person, but in general, what I observed is, something about our crew is that I think we did go into the mission with a very positive attitude. A lot of us were familiar with what we would be up against for the mission. So we were prepared to whatever degree we could be mentally for the effects of the isolation and the confinement and the small annoyances that each other might bring. But as a general trend, something we noticed was a little after the halfway point, each of us, maybe found that we needed a little extra space away from other crew members just to decompress. I personally loved going over to the Science Dome and just doing my work out there and looking out at the landscape. That was my kind of alone reset time. From a mental health perspective, something that I noticed, so my research project was what I was interviewing everyone for, was I tried to examine the effect that observance of personal rituals or personal habits might have on our mental health or our perspective throughout the day. And I noticed that for the most part, everyone kind of built their own little habits while we were in the mission. Whether or not those habits were the same habits we had in the outside world back on Earth varied from person to person, and we might obviously find different effects on a longer mission. But by and large, with everyone that I interviewed, I found that whether it was looking out the window at the changing landscape every morning, or going and sitting in a favorite spot, or even pacing around in some instances, we each developed little habits that we enjoyed. That kind of helped us get through the day or pass the time if we were in between experiments. However, I will say that we did have a pretty full research agenda. Did keep us pretty busy. Something else that was unique about our crew is we actually chose to eat every meal together, and I think that really helped us with some bonding. I was recently reading about some of the first expeditions to the Antarctic and some lessons learned, goods and bad habits that they practiced. And the crews who did better were the ones who shared their meals together, and it increased morale. So I know that we had an excellent cook who brought us all together, and I think that actually plays a really key role in, as small as a thing as it may be, it plays a key role in how we all made our way through the mission. So I don't know if any of the rest of you have anything to say about the food or what your day-to-day repeated habits were, but I'll leave it at that.
And who did the cooking? Who did the most of the cooking?
Julio may have been our crew botanist, but I think we can call him our crew chef.
Awesome.
I was the unofficial chef of the crew, and let me tell you, it was a different experience cooking with dehydrated food. And hopefully, one of the goals of developing sustainable agricultural systems for long-term or long-duration settlements on Mars is that we can start cooking with fresh food that's grown on Mars. That is an ongoing research challenge that many people are working on today.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we always see, especially when you're looking at movies, people are always, eating these food and, these packets like we give kids, you give them these pouches. And I think in a lot of cases, now you probably I got to ask this, did you actually have any pouches there like that to simulate what astronauts might eat actually up in the station?
No, I don't believe we did. It was almost exclusively the dehydrated meats and vegetables and eggs. So we did go through a lot of water to prepare it, unless I'm forgetting something. Anyone else?
No, it's true. Yeah. I see in the chat we have a comment from Scott Libman on LinkedIn asking about the food nutrition. Yeah, exactly. A lot of dehydrated foods, all the meats and all the vegetables come in their dried form. So especially the meat would look pretty unappetizing before you would do anything to it. Definitely a strange smell prior to adding water. However, follow the instructions, add water, wait 15 minutes. It smelled fantastic. It tasted totally normal. And I think with the right preparation, the food was delicious.
Yeah, now was that to more simulate weight to get, to take something into space? Obviously, the lighter it is, the less it actually costs to get it there. So was that really the idea here, or is it also for preservation? That if you're actually going to go on a long-term mission, 5 months or so, you obviously need the food to last. And I'm sure refrigeration and preservatives aren't really on the agenda, in that kind of scenario.
Do you want to weigh on that, Shravan?
Yeah, I would love to. So all of these dehydrated ingredients that we were using had incredibly long shelf lives, greater than 10 years for most of them, which meant that on a long-term mission to Mars, it's most likely that it would use a water reclamation system similar to what we see on long-duration spaceflight missions like the International Space Station, where all of the water that is used is recycled, and therefore it's not really a consumable resource. So by having dehydrated foods that can last for the entirety of a mission, and having a cycle of water that you can use to cook, then it ensures that, one, you always have the ingredients necessary to cook, and then two, you don't have to deal with things like food going bad. And especially for a longer duration mission, nutrition is key. So having all of the ingredients for a well-rounded diet and having them for the entirety of the mission is critical for the success and health of the crew.
Cool. So Olivia, we give you a chance to chime in. So what are your thoughts on that? The whole kind of food and nutrition and, having to, and the environment and the people and, and even some of the challenges when it comes to the, being around everybody so in close quarters every day and, being able to get away. And, how did that affect you and how did you kind of, get through each day?
Well, like any sort of job where you're on call like that all the time, or where you're living at work or you're doing long hours, it's all about like your willpower and sticking to like your own schedule or, in a way that's still helpful to others. But, when you're living where you work, you can fall into this pattern of like, the second you wake up at breakfast, you're looking over your results from yesterday. And then all the way until dinner, you're talking about what you're going to do tomorrow. And like Alex was saying, at the end of week one, you're kind of exhausted. That's not like a very livable pace for you to keep up forever. So after that first week, we started learning like we have to better regulate the amount of time that we're spending focusing on the work that we're doing, as well as taking that time to kind of like unwind, relax. Because if you want to go on a long duration mission like that, you don't want to burn out. You don't want to burn out very quickly at all. And with the food and the water and all the resources that we had, it was modeling, just living on a budget, being able to budget your resources to last you for the length of your mission. Because they gave us, more than enough food, just about enough water for us to be able to, live the 2 weeks that we were scheduled to be there and more. But, if we had been snacking all day, or, eating pancakes 24/7, we would have run out of everything pretty quickly. So for me, it was, and I guess this is going back to your last question, I got into this thinking, 4 months in advance, I can take 2 weeks off and go on a space-themed vacation. That sounds pretty awesome. But realizing how much work actually goes into it, where you're prepping for your project months in advance, the whole time you're there, you're working, you're analyzing your data. And then even in the aftermath, we're reaching out to people. We're still trying to share the results of our findings, all that good stuff. It's become like a club, it's like a full-time or like a part-time, I guess, after school commitment for all of us. So you get out of this mission what you put into it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that makes perfect sense. And one thing that I think, and it comes back to, and I think Alex, you actually would be a great person to answer this, is that you definitely develop processes to, I think, what I would consider recovery from the stresses and everything that's happening from physical, mental health. Now, in what you learned, let's say from that 2 weeks period, do you find that is also repeatable for a longer duration? So let's say you were actually in that habitat for 5 months. Do you think that what you learned and how you were able to adapt and work together, would that actually be something that would be repeatable and you could extend through the whole 5 month period? Or do you think that you would actually have to have more work to actually do this for a longer period than the 2 weeks that you did?
That's such a great question. I mean, I definitely feel like everyone has different temperaments. For myself, I would become emotionally drained after a while. So I think that that is something that our crew would need to discuss and set systems in place, like to allow for that. If we were, to go on a longer duration mission together. I think if it were to be our first ever mission, like this one was, we would be in for a bad time. But like you said, having gone on this 2 weeks first and getting to understand what the lifestyle is like, I think we're in a really good position now to maybe set contingencies in place. Something that we did after returning from the mission was, and beforehand, we tried to interview and speak with people in our academic and professional circles who had also been on analog and simulated space missions before, get their advice. And a professor of mine had given me the advice that, once every 10 to 15 days, you just need to schedule a day where there's no work. It's the fun only day. And just incorporating natural rhythms into our life, I think would be something that could help us get through that. I'm sure the rest of the crew can speak to some of the fun activities we did. There was a lot of games and things like that. But I think it is so important to realize that as important as the work is, especially on a real space mission, being up there is such a resource, and the amount of research you're able to do. Our bodies and our minds are also a resource, right? Makes me think of back on Skylab when they were only going to be up there for a short amount of time and they had so much research to do. And mission control was pushing these astronauts so hard and working them 16, 18-hour days. And eventually they just turned off their comms and went on strike for 2 days, right? Because they needed time to reset. And hopefully what this type of research and going on these missions can teach us is ways to avoid that situation. So do any of the rest of the crew have any thoughts on what good contingencies would be?
Go ahead, Julio.
You bring up a very good point, Alex, on that. For us, this was our first experience going out on 2 weeks, and because we organize virtually in the time of the pandemic, we didn't benefit from the usual typical training that actual NASA astronauts do in other state agencies do, in which that they have a crew together, in which they do extensive bonding exercises, in which the chemistry between the crew members grows over time before the expedition. We were able to successfully navigate that while we were at our expedition for the 2 weeks that we were there.
Okay, so you basically just had to figure it out as you went, whereas, there's some sort of preconditioning that might happen, I don't want to say a real mission. I mean, the idea with the simulation is to really simulate, with as much reality. And I think now a good question I'd like to ask as well, and I think from after this, I'm going to go through some of the questions that are coming in from a lot of the audience here. So there's some really good questions coming in, and I think there's some alien conspiracy theories as well. We might just skip those, but one question that I have is, who thinks that this was actually a lot harder than you originally thought it would be? Like, it was way more work, a lot what you didn't expect. Think of what you were thinking, like, this is going to be fun. Was it a lot harder and a lot more unexpected than you thought? Maybe Dylan, start with you. What do you think?
I think we as a group, at least as a group, we did a really good job of preparing for the mission. We thought through as much as we could, and we did have probably barely sufficient, but in the end sufficient time to really think about how to make the most of the experience. And we all came in with the best intentions for this to really be a training ground for all of us, and to treat it like, okay, once we're in simulation, we are astronauts on Mars and we have our objectives in place. I don't feel, for me personally, it was any more challenging or difficult than I expected, because I think the expectations were there. We knew what we were getting ourselves into. At least for me, the actual experience was very much in line with what I imagined. Now, the thing that surprised me was how similar it felt to what I imagined being an astronaut would be like. I was surprised, very pleasantly surprised, how real it felt at times. There were periods of us on EVA, extravehicular activities, where we're out in our spacesuits for a couple of hours. And genuinely, there were times when I was so entrenched in the objective of whether it be looking for emergency shelters or perhaps just trying to collect some soil samples, that there were whole hours that went by where I was like, okay, I'm an astronaut on Mars, and I'm trying to keep the team safe, trying to keep us focused.
Well, I think, that almost to me is definitely a testament to, the Mars Society and the MDRS, staff and really making this a simulation that is, as close to reality as it could possibly be. So I think, we definitely have to, give credit where credit is due. I think
definitely.
They're definitely, considered one of the best, or if not the best, when it comes to Mars simulation. So, I'm very happy to hear that, the experience is really what you expected it to be, and that, everybody get along, as well as you did. And I think, it's really encouraging to see. And I think, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are out there that are, looking to do this as well. And, I think from the Mars Society is actually the MDRS habitat is actually booked up into almost 2022 now. Getting close. So it's actually a lot of interest. And so, it's definitely been really fun. So what I would like to do, so if anybody else wants to kind of chime in, maybe just one more, if you want to volunteer, just kind of go through your experience then, was it what you expected, less, equal, more? So Chauvin.
Yeah, so I think that Dylan touched on a great point, that we prepared really heavily to the extent that we could so that we would know what to expect. But I think that for a lot of us, specifically when it came to our experiments or just beginning our mission in the station, we quickly learned to expect the unexpected, which I think is something that astronauts on space missions also need to quickly adopt. That means, when anything goes not according to plan, that doesn't mean that it is a lost cause. That means that you just have to learn how to analyze the situation and really come together as a team and bring together everyone's diverse skill sets and backgrounds to help to restructure what's going on. So for example, the first day, the day before our first EVA, we were the first crew back at the station for several months due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And what we quickly found out is that for a lot of the spacesuits, there were issues with the older batteries that had been in there, which required, learning how to maintain the spacesuits and take them apart and replace components the day before a science critical EVA. And it was a full team effort. We didn't know that our spacesuits would not be fully functional at that moment, but we knew that we would be facing problems that we wouldn't necessarily be able to plan out for step by step. So I think that specific mentality of just being able to take everything in stride and come out on top is the one thing that we knew we would have to do. But only when we got to the station did we fully understand the depth of that. And I'd like to think that our crew was very successful at coming together to do that.
That's awesome. Awesome. So if you guys don't mind, I'd like to go through, I think we get a lot more engagement and questions than I was hoping we'd get a lot. And my hope was answered. There's a lot here. So we may have to actually go back and, luckily the Mars Society is actually on there helping us out with some responses as well. So I'd like to jump in here and let me know if you can actually see them very well. So it kind of pops up at the bottom of the screen. And I think this is actually a great question from Mike Stoltz here about, what did you miss most from Earth? Because really it is a simulation. And just like Dylan said, you really felt like you were on Mars, an astronaut on Mars. So you must have actually had that feeling of missing Earth. And so, let's start with Olivia. Maybe we'll start with you. What did you miss most?
Probably for me, I was used to, for work, being outside all the time. I would be out in the fields. I would be planting plants, getting my hands in the dirt and things like that. For me, it was being able to freely be outside with that fresh air, being able to have your actual hands in the dirt, not your gloves in the dirt. There's a lot of freedoms that we take for granted here. And that's, having the perfect atmospheric combination for us to be able to breathe, and the temperature and all that good stuff. So for me, it was outside time.
Cool. How about you, Julio? Would you like to chime in?
Certainly, certainly. Some of the things that I miss from Earth is that I'm a very snacky person. Uh, I miss candy a lot. You know, the small creature comforts that you can, you know, when you have the urge to have something sweet and you don't have it laying around within your apartment, your home, or in your desk. You can go over to the convenience store and just get it. When you're at the station, what you bring is what you have. So if you didn't bring anything sweet, or you underestimated how much your urge was going to have something sweet during the expedition, you had to ration what you brought.
The inside joke there is that we had a 100-piece bag of candy and we ate it in like 2 days, right? Is that what we're alluding to?
It took you that long? Wow.
Yeah. Well,
I don't think that would have made it through the night for me. Awesome. Anybody else would like to field this question as well before we move on?
I think probably worth mentioning our scarcest resource was actually water. We started the mission with knowing that we had right around 500 gallons, I think 480 gallons of water for the 2 weeks for 6 of us. And this was water to be used for everything. Our experiments, keeping clean, showers, this sort of thing. This not compared to what we probably use on a daily basis. This is pretty light. It turns out that that's about as much water as you can run on a high power shower for about an hour. And this is what we'd use for 6 of us for 2 weeks. And so we had to really ration off even things like showers and how much time you spend cleaning yourself. And this was probably the biggest comfort that was taken away from us. And it definitely took a little bit of adapting and for us to feel comfortable with. But we ended up making it work. And by the end of the 2 weeks, we were pretty set in our new ways and fine with it. But in the end, our thank goodness for our good math skills, because we ended up only having enough water for about a 1-day contingency after the 2 weeks, such that if the mission had been extended by 2 days, we would have been out of water for at least 1 day.
Wow. And so, I mean, you have to ration water, not just for drinking, but of course, even for things like showering, washing your hands. I mean, is it really like a central water basin that you actually had, and you actually had to allocate water from that one central basin? Is that actually how it was? And so I'm assuming you had to keep tabs. And I think, Chauvin, that was one of your responsibilities, wasn't it? To make sure that you actually had enough water to get through. And I guess you wanted to make sure that you did. Otherwise, I guess it would be quite uncomfortable for a couple of days.
Chauvin, you wanted to take that?
Yeah, so that's exactly correct, Ron. We had one large tank on the outside of our habitat, and every day we would turn on a switch and we'd pump some water from that tank to this loft tank we kept inside of our habitat. And that loft tank would have different markings on it to measure the amount of water left. And several times a day, I would just climb up to the loft and make note of it. And then we as a crew would then decide how we would use the water. So who was showering that day? And we quickly learned that reusing was the name of the game. We were cooking with dehydrated food. So a lot of, I have to give a lot of credit to Julio here, who was able to reuse a lot of the same water to rehydrate different foods and then cook things like pasta, so that we wouldn't be using a lot of water for something and immediately getting rid of it. So it was just monitoring on a day-by-day basis, and then just making sure it was transparency. Everyone was aware of how much water each activity would use and how much was left.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, the logistics there are just incredible, and I think it's important. You know, I think it comes down to attention to detail. You know, you have to calculate. You have to know what's going on. You can't just be wasteful. You know, I think that's not even something that's in your vocabulary when you're on a mission like this in the simulation. You can't be wasteful, unless it's with that 100-piece bag of candy. I mean, that's okay. You get to bring in some comforts that at least last you for a day, right? So I'm just going to kind of go on to, I think I'm going to go on to one more question. And just so everybody kind of knows that's in the audience, that maybe what we can do is kind of go back and maybe take a look at some of your questions that we aren't able to answer live on the show. Maybe I'll send some links out to you guys that are here with me today. If you want to kind of go through the comments on the threads and feel like, adding something after the fact, you don't have to, just if you want to kind of engage with the audience in the comments after the fact, that would be amazing. So what I'm going to do is there's one here that actually made perfect sense, and actually it's still on the topic of food. And let me just see if I can find it here. There's so many, it's actually difficult. So I do remember it. So one of the questions was, did you notice that there was a reduction in your caloric intake by being on this mission? So I don't even know, were you actually even tracking calories? I don't know if you had MyFitnessPal with you or not. I don't know what you were doing for calorie tracking, but I'm assuming you actually were eating a lot less calories on this mission than you would normally do, especially if you weren't snacking on candy.
I can start that, but I'd like to be followed up by maybe our chef expert and possibly our HSO. But we were given a list of foods prior to the missions, and the majority of those foods ended up being identical to what we had in our pantry. And so we had an idea of what kind of items we'd have, and thus, once Julio expressed interest in being the provider of some of our meals, he actually was able to come up with a menu for the 2 weeks. So we actually knew well before the mission roughly what we'd be eating, and this allowed us to get an idea of how to maintain a typical number of calories, like 2,500, say for men, 2,000 for women, something like this. What we did not get was the quantities, and so when we arrived, we took. We essentially took a look at what we had, and the quantities for some things like potatoes were enormous, lots of potatoes, and then we had other things like chicken and pork. For those of us who eat meat, were definitely less, but it was clear. It didn't take much mathematics for us to know that we did have enough food for all of us to have 2,000, 2,500 calories per day each, with room. So we did not have to restrict our diets calorically. Whether we had to change our diets, sure.
Well, I think one thing too to we're kind of talking about input here, but in terms of activity and strenuous activity, do you find now it's going to kind of be my own question? Do you find that you were more active here in terms of burning calories, that you were kept quite busy, a lot of moderate physical activity, where you actually were really working hard and burning a lot of calories? So maybe even then you were kind of, your net at the end of the day might have actually been a little bit less.
Maybe defer to our athlete, our rower, Alex.
So something that I observed during the mission, and I discussed this with Dylan while we were in there, is going on our EVAs was very physically demanding. And, each crew that goes on these simulations has a different research agenda, which translates to different amount and duration of time that they're out on their extravehicular activities. But for us, we had a pretty high cadence. And as some of the viewers may be aware, MDRS is located about, I want to say 4,000 feet of elevation. I might be a little off there, but, and it was very hot. So I, for one, came back exhausted and almost like bone tired after some of our EVAs. And I'm a pretty active person, but I was very happy to have the delicious meals that Julio cooked. And I think this is something that is, in one way, a very close replica of real EVAs on the ISS. I mean, we know that our astronauts are pushing themselves to their physical limits. It's so challenging for them to go and walk around in space. But on the other hand, our senses of taste and smell are a little muffled in microgravity due to fluid redistribution and things like that. So maybe we got a little more enjoyment out of our food than an astronaut out on orbit might. But for me, at least, I was eating way more food than usual because I was so hungry from walking around. So I don't know if the rest of you had a similar or different experience than that.
Anybody else want to chime in on this? And then we'll move on to maybe some photos.
Actually, Olivia, go.
Oh, I was gonna say that was probably what felt the most realistic to me. It's almost like you're coming back from like gymnastics or soccer practice, but like coming back from EVA, you and the other two people on your team, you're coming back exhausted, but you're coming back excited too. So you just want to, tell the rest of your team, oh my God, these are the things that we saw. Here's the samples we collected. It was so cool out there, you guys. You'll have to try it next time. So I feel like we bonded in our little subgroups, being out on EVA, coming back, being exhausted and being hungry, and coming back to Julio and having him like usually have a lunch on the table for us, or if his team was out, like I think I made mac and cheese one time. That was the only meal I ever cooked, but being able to come back with your team and bonding over that EVA was probably one of the most realistic experiences for me.
Cool. One thing I actually would like to talk about too now, because this is a simulation about, being in isolation and on another planet, one thing that we've, it's been challenging, especially I think since the pandemic, is that these analog mission sites have become somewhat tourist attractions. And really the idea is you're supposed to be isolated. I know that sounds a little harsh, but you're actually supposed to be locked away and not really be interacting and seeing people. And did you find, was this a problem? Like, did you actually notice that there were people around the station at all during your mission that were there that should not have been there? Maybe Chauvin, if you want to start with you, I see you're nodding there.
Yeah, so I think that like you mentioned, because of the novelty of these sites, there are often visitors who come very close to the habitat. Thankfully, due to the director of the Mars Desert Research Station, Dr. Shannon Rupert, our crew was able to stay relatively isolated from these visitors to the site. As in, she and the assistant director lived on site at an outpost that was out of sight for us. And if there were any of these people coming very close to the station or within view, they would often go and speak with them and ask them politely to leave the site so that they would not interfere with our analog. So we were very fortunate to have them there. There were times where, out the window, we would see something like a vehicle. And the best we could do as a team was to not let that affect our mentality of being Martians. So no, extended discussions about it. If you see it, you try to put it out of mind. And I think that, it didn't negatively impact our analog mission just because we were very serious about preserving the fidelity of our simulation. And we had a great support crew behind the scenes who had handled these issues before they ever came to us.
Oh, that's good. And it's good to make a statement here, because that's one thing that the Mars Society has asked me to make sure I make note of today, is that, these analog missions, the facility and the habitat in Utah is actually not open to the public. So we really don't want to be seeing, people walking their dog, driving by, parasailing, whatever. Well, in the desert, that'd be kind of fun. But, we don't want to see people there that shouldn't be there. So if you could, politely stay away from these stations. And I think that really holds true for all of them. The idea is, a Mars off-world simulation where, the analog astronauts are in isolation. So yeah, somebody just said we need space bouncers. Perhaps. I wonder if maybe we can hire for that. So what I would like to jump into now, because I know we're kind of getting on, and I do appreciate, I know you're all busy, and I really do appreciate you taking the time tonight. So I just kind of want to go through some of the pictures that you sent me. So Dylan actually provided some photos to me, kind of looking at some of your missions and what you were doing and some of your logs. And so, we have a couple here. So I'm just going to bring up a couple pictures here. So I think these are really, really fantastic shots, here in front of the actual habitat. And so maybe as I go through each picture, if one of you want to actually kind of give some context into kind of what we're looking at. So maybe starting out here, Dylan, how about you take up first shot?
Sure thing. Yeah, we have the 6 of us now in front of the hab, or the habitat. This is a 2-floor cylindrical building where the first floor is primarily for setting up for EVAs or extravehicular activities, and we have the airlocks. One of them is visible just between Julio and Shravan on the left two individuals there. As well as the top floor, the second floor, you see a giant window under the word desert in Mars Desert Research Station, and this is one of the windows we have up where we live. So we have 6 small bedrooms. They're really just spaces for our twin-sized beds, as well as the dining table and kitchen we have up there as well.
It's probably worth mentioning as well that this was a photo that was taken on our very first day. So for the duration of the mission, when we were actually in simulation, anytime we left this building, we had to clear our extravehicular activity at least the night before with mission control. And we weren't leaving this building without our full EVA suits, which is, the helmet and the gloves, and all that stuff. So we are not in simulation for this photo. That's why that's why we're in the open air.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Olivia. Something else I wanted to say about the structure of the HAB, which Dylan just described, for viewers who may not be familiar with Dr. Zubrin's work and his excellent Mars travel architecture, is actually the body of the spacecraft that would transport the crew to Mars would be repurposed into the structure. So that actually drives the size and the diameter and the shape of the HAB. You can see it's cylindrical, about the size of a rocket body of that size, and that would be repurposed into the living space. So all very efficient and in his vision.
No, that's awesome. Actually, I didn't know that. So yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. That's cool. So one thing, this photo here, actually, this is a absolutely amazing shot of all of you. Just I actually used that on the promo when we were promoting the show. So that's a fantastic shot. Now, of course, this is, again, probably, you're not in your EVA suits here. Not quite yet. So we're going to go into, so this one here is another shot. So this looks like you're actually doing some work here. So if you could actually explain maybe in context of what is going on in this shot, and we'll let the people who actually are in it take it away.
Sure, I can start real fast. And Alex, I'd like to hear more from you. It's we have Alex, our HSO, and me working away. What we're doing at this very moment, it's difficult to tell, but I think I do see Alex. Looks like she's writing in her journal. It could be something related to navigation. I'm not sure if you recall, Alex.
Struggling with the mute button. Yeah, what I was doing here actually was recording some of our GPS coordinates from one of our EVAs. So on our research agenda was a project where we were simulating what some of the first crews on Mars might do, which would be to try to more accurately map the terrain and build upon some of the mapping that our autonomous rovers and now helicopters on Mars are doing. And one of those activities would be looking for potential emergency shelters that would be appropriate for crew members in different situations. As we know, weather can change very quickly on the surface of Mars. So we were, quite an exercise in visual navigation and cartography, and we wanted to make sure we recorded everything accurately. So I believe that's what I was in the middle of at the moment. We did have to file a lot of reports. There was a ton of writing involved at the end of every day. So I think we were probably, the entire crew was going through that process when this photo was taken.
Yeah, and actually one thing about your logs is actually, if you go to the marssociety.org, you can actually go through and take a look at the crew reports and a lot that actually of what you actually submitted there. So if anybody who is interested and to see what actually went in day by day, you can actually go through and take a look and read what life was actually like for everybody here on the panel today. And of course, you brought up EVA. So actually it's well fitting that the next few photos are actually you all doing EVA work. So here we go. So we haven't, so in some cases, these photos were provided that it may not necessarily be you guys. So if in that case, if it's not something familiar to you, maybe just in context, what is really the idea of what's going on here. So if you want to take that away, so I'll just kind of go for a volunteer on this one?
Maybe Julio or Olivia, or
I can take it. I think this was actually a picture of me. I remember always consistently getting EVA suit number 4, and that was one of the two-piece. Yeah, it was one of the two-piece suits where the suit was, what you see in the back contains a pretty heavy battery and an internal fan, and what you see from going out of the suit and going towards the helmet are air tubes, which provides air circulation into the helmet, which was very important and very much appreciated underneath the scorching sun over at the MDRS site. What we have here was most likely us going out on EVA, in which we took at least one ATV and one rover, in which we would go out and navigate to a location of interest for that particular EVA. I can't tell you exactly which EVA what this photo is, but I can at least tell you that that's me and that's the ATV going out on our mission.
Also in this picture, Julio was describing the fan and the air tubes that were part of our helmets. Now, obviously, these are simulated spacesuits, so they're not 100% airtight. And you might be asking yourself, why is air circulation necessary if it's not a real suit? But in actuality, the movement of air around our faces was important so we did not become hypoxic. Some of the carbon dioxide that we exhaled out in still air conditions did have the potential to build up in the helmet area. So as crew engineer Shravan was describing previously, our ability to keep the suits in good working order was actually essential to our health and our ability to carry out the task.
Oh, that sounds extremely important. And we want to be as realistic as possible, but we can't have people passing out either. So that doesn't make for a very fun day at all. So we actually have another little EVA an exercise going on. So that looks pretty cool. So I'm just going to kind of quickly go through the last, because I know we're kind of getting late on. We're past the hour, and I know you probably have a lot to get to. So I'm just going to kind of go through that one's. Yeah, we have this one here. Actually, maybe if somebody wants to put this one in context, because this looks like you were having a lot of fun here.
Yeah, this looks like these three individuals are no one we know, but certainly they're going through a similar experience to what we had as well. This is a good visual of what the EVAs can be like. This is what we were seeking when we applied to the Mars as a research station. We had seen images like this online, and as us looking for sort of that practice experience, that a way for us to better our skills in field work and in isolation, this is exactly what we were looking to do. And it looks like they were gathering some rock samples here, just as we had done several times.
Some really nice shot here.
Yeah, this was a morning show. This was I believe the last full day. Quite honestly, just going down to use the restroom and noticing that we had one of the most gorgeous sunrises we had during the entire 2 weeks, and so grab the camera and run down to the Science Dome. This is the facility where we were able to analyze a lot of our data. And just really stunning.
Another really nice shot here as well.
Fun fact, the Science Dome has great acoustics.
Which is good. Actually, there was a question that came in earlier, which that just kind of triggered that in my mind when you talk about acoustics. Is somebody was actually talking about, was music part of your day? Is that something that you actually had going on in the station and that you did? So somebody actually already asked that question. So we might as well talk about that right now, since you brought up acoustics. So it's really useful.
Olivia, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I'd love to, or we could take it together. But of course, as anyone would imagine, we went into this with a space-themed playlist. As you would imagine, we listened to Rocket Man about 1,000 times over the duration of our mission. And certain things like that you're able to bring with you that don't take up any physical space, just the amount of gigabytes worth of storage it would take up on your phone to have these downloaded songs come in with you. It's a very important creature comfort and not something that you might think of as essential when you're packing for a mission like this. But I think having like our comfort songs that we would listen to while we're at home come with us to this environment, it was a good way to feel like we're not in so alien of a place.
Kind of related on the music thing is, I mentioned before that we tried to adhere to as many actual space mission operations as we possibly could while we were in the mission. And one thing I learned is that every morning on the ISS, the astronauts wake up to a song of their choice. The crew actually, I believe, rotates through picking the song. So we thought we would do the same thing and set an alarm and wake up to music. We had a whole playlist. We thought we'd get a new song each day, but we actually loved the song from day one so much that we woke up to it every single morning. And that song was Good Morning by Kanye West. So that
it
became
wasn't just once every morning either. It was on repeat 10 times every morning.
Hey,
I still listen to it every morning.
Awesome. So I know we're kind of gone past the time that I kind of was going to keep you occupied for the hour. So I think what I'm going to do now, so I just want to have what kind of one closing thought of my own. So what I'm going to do is I just want to mention that the Mars Society, the 24th Annual International Mars Society Convention is coming up October 14th to 17th. 2021. It is a virtual event. You can still submit your abstracts. You can still register. So head over to the Mars Society. It's marssociety.org. You can see that actually in the bottom right of the branding of the screen. And so what I would like to do, so what I'm going to do is if we'll kind of close out the show. So I'll give each one of you kind of some parting, take some parting thoughts. And then if everybody in the audience wants to stick around, we actually have an amazing video that was shot, and it was actually narrated and the walkthrough by Dylan, Commander Dylan, where they actually were giving you an inside look of the station. So I actually have that queued up. And so I'm actually going to close out the show. It's about a 10-minute video. It is absolutely well worth the watch. So I do encourage you to see that at the end of the show. But I think for now, I think we'll just kind of get up into the wrap up. And if we want to kind of go through each one of you and some closing thoughts, maybe kind of summarize your experience and maybe what's next for you. So how about Commander Dylan? How about we start off with you again, and we'll kind of just go through.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, first off, thank you, Ron, for having us. It's great for us to, and this is the first podcast we're doing as a group, and how appropriate that it be on the Mars Society channel. So that's fantastic. The place where anyone could see more content also from any of us, we have a social media handle, Red Planet People, and REDPLANETPEOPLE, Instagram as well as Facebook, and on YouTube, our videos are being posted to my personal YouTube channel, which is just Dylan Dickstein, my same name that's shown here. I really had a very positive experience at the Mars Desert Research Station. Thank you, Ron. And it was something that I could imagine, at least for myself, and I think a few of us can say the same thing, that we want to experience again. You know, at some point when we either later in our careers, we'll see what happens, or maybe after we experience other astronaut analogs, certainly would be interested to go back to Hanksville, Utah, and see how much we've grown. But we look forward to continuing our relationship with the Mars Society, and we're excited as a group to speak in October at the International Conference.
No, it's amazing. It's going to be exciting to see you there. So, parting thoughts for you, Crew Engineer Chauvin.
Yeah, so I echo much of the sentiment that Dylan conveyed. I think it was an incredible learning and growing experience for us. Pardon me. And I think that it's safe to say that this is just the beginning of our journey. I think several of us have mentioned earlier that some of us on the crew do intend to throw our head in the ring to become NASA astronauts. And others, we want to just pursue the evolution of scientific knowledge and understanding of our universe. And this analog was an opportunity to gel those two together. It was the closest that any of us have come to feeling seeing what it feels like to be an astronaut. And this kind of training is unparalleled and unmatched. So, you know, we're very grateful to the Mars Society and the Mars Desert Research Station for hosting us and inspiring us to continue to reach higher and to continue to grow personally as individuals and as a team, so that one day we can truly become the Red Planet people, as our handle suggests.
Awesome. And I'm just going to put this out there since you actually mentioned this. So just a show of hands. So who is actually aspiring to actually be a NASA astronaut and actually go down that career path? I'm going to do it too. So remember, if you have an extra spot, I come along. I actually stow away really well in luggage. Just put that out there.
Noted. Thanks, Ron.
So safety. Ron, throw us both in your backpack.
Yeah, perfect. So safety officer Alex, if you could give us some of your parting thoughts.
Yeah, I think that a theme that came up a couple times in this conversation was not explicitly said, but just in the stories that we told, was the level of trust and respect that we had among the crew. I think that, something that Dylan mentioned is on a simulated space expedition like this, because it is simulated, you really do get out of it what you put into it. And the amount of preparation that we did before and the amount of dialogue we had as we were getting to know each other, I think that we all understood that all the other 5 members were very committed to getting as much as we possibly could out of the experience, given the limitations on resources that were available. And I think the level of trust we had with each other, trust that we would make decisions in each other's best interest, trust that we would make decisions consistent with the simulation and the operational protocols we had discussed ahead of time, trust that we would assume good intentions in one another, even when there was like a off nominal situation, which there were several times. I think that is really what helped us go the distance. Something that is different about a simulated space mission as opposed to, a full NASA in-space mission is, the NASA astronauts, for example, are training together for years, as Julio mentioned, developing that deep interpersonal connection before they go. Whereas some of us knew each other before this mission, and even though we did prepare together well in our few months, we didn't have that same long history. Something I would be interested in, and I know we've discussed it to some extent, and this may be limited by where our career paths take us, but I think it would be interesting to stick together as a crew and maybe every once in a while go on another mission and perhaps turn it into a longitudinal study to learn how our personalities and our skills develop. So who knows, but I think that if we'll be able to follow through with that, but I think that having a deep level of trust and respect for one another and believing that you're on the same page, I think it really helps. And I think that's something that we all got to experience on this mission.
That was fantastic. Well said, Olivia. Thank you very much for that. Crew scientist. Oh, sorry, Alex. So crew scientist, Olivia, your parting thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. And I'd like to take some credit for what Alex said as well. I'm just kidding. But my advice I would like to give to anyone that wants to be an astronaut, an explorer, or just to take into your everyday life is to take solace in the fact that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. I know that sounds pretty bad, but for example, on this trip, you're supposed to go into it thinking, I need to have all my contingencies in mind in case what I'm trying to research doesn't quite pan out, because I can only use what I have to bring with me or to use as a resource that's given to me once I'm there. And from my experience personally, and I know this will come out in our next YouTube video that we're going to release, but all of my plants died on the very first day, 12 hours into this trip. And obviously there's a mental setback there, but to get past that and to think, okay, what's the next step? What is my contingency research going to be? Because I have 2 weeks and I have to utilize this time to the best of my ability so I'm able to have a deliverable at the end of this mission. So having those backup plans in place, and like Dr. Zubrin always says, semper gumby, always be flexible, and you get out of the situation what you put into it. And if what you're putting into a situation is hard work, flexibility, and a positive attitude, you're definitely, going to have a good product at the end as your end result. So that's true if you're an astronaut, that's true if you're a researcher in a biomedical research lab, or, what have you. I'll take it into my next trip as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Olivia, for that. And to close this out, so crew botanist Julio, if you want to give us your parting thoughts, and go ahead.
Thank you, Ron. And I want to reiterate the gratitude for giving us the space to share our experiences. I guess in the short term, my hope is that I will finish my PhD so I can move on and apply the skills I've learned during graduate school to further our efforts to advance human space exploration, hopefully to Moon, Mars, and beyond. But the largest parting thought that I want to impart with our valued viewers here is that the analog astronaut community is very welcoming, and you do not need to be a engineer or a scientist, be in the STEM field. This is to go on a expedition to, say, MDRS or one of the many other analog stations around the world. It's accessible to you. You don't have to be highly trained, just have a genuine interest in a plan for what experience you want to have in that environment, whether it is more technical or if you're a writer or an artist or a musician, using that environment as a source of inspiration and newfound perspective to enhance your personal professional development. This is certainly a good way to be exposed to a brand new world.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. Well, I definitely want to extend my appreciation for all of you for coming on and spending, an hour and 15 minutes with me tonight. So that's actually going above and beyond. I know you're very busy, and I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day and evening to really speak and inspire. I think, I've always dreamed of going on an analog mission and never thought I really could. And, I think from listening to you and, that everybody really can be part of this. Space isn't just, and research, and it's not just for everybody that takes a traditional academic path and maybe a very specific, pigeonhole kind of role into science. I think, that we should always strive to, to really do what we love, and to take that chance to go for those adventures. And I really want to appreciate you inspiring me. And I think, everybody else, and I want to appreciate everybody who actually came in and to the audience and submitted questions and came out to support all of you on the panel today. And again, thank you very much. So thank you. So what I'll do is just kind of say goodbye from the perspective of, the crew, and thank you very much for your time tonight. And as I said, I do have a video that Dylan actually does a walkthrough of the station. And so I'm going to bring that up and I'm going to close the show. It's about 10 minutes. It is absolutely well worth you sticking around to watch that. You're welcome to chat in the comments while that's going on. And from there, I want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in tonight for episode 2 of Red Planet Live. And I very much appreciate your time. And so
I would love to mention, Ron, before we go on, just very quickly, any of the questions that didn't get addressed in the chat, we'd be happy to answer on our personal Instagram page. So nobody feel like their questions are going unheard. We will address them all.
Yeah, and what I'll do as well is I will send the links to this stream to Dylan after the fact, maybe tomorrow, and I'll send that to you. And if you want to share that with the team as well, so that'll be the links to the across the platforms, which is LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch as well. So I will send that to you, and you're welcome. We were running out of platforms. Actually, just everything but Instagram, just because it's very hard to stream there. So,
and we've got you covered there.
Yeah, there you go. You can actually help me fill in the gaps there. So again, I want to appreciate, thank you very much for coming out tonight and speaking with me about this. This was awesome, and thank you very much. So yeah, I will end the show with the video. So again, it's about 10 minutes. I encourage you to stick around and have a watch, and I think you'll enjoy it. So thank you, everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you.
You're on.
Bye now.
Stay safe and stay healthy.
2 weeks in isolation. 6 mere strangers. Meet Olivia Ellen, Shayna Hume, Dylan Dickstein, Shravan Hariharan, Alex Koltrup, and Julio Hernandez. See the highs and the lows as we close the airlock at MDRS.
Welcome to the Mars Desert Research Station. You've met our team, and now we're getting settled into the habitat where we live. And here, let me reintroduce you to our fantastic team and show you where we live. Welcome to the first floor of the habitat. Let me close this door real fast. we can first walk over to our crew scientist, Olivia. She has 2 sets of plants. We have green onions, we have tomatoes, where she's testing different growth rates based upon different variables she's looking at. We can also take a look, of course, safety first here at the habitat. We have a really fantastic set of emergency equipment in case, well, anyone gets hurt or injured. Let me go ahead and close this up. Resources are limited here at the station. We are simulating Mars life. We are separating all of our garbage into burnable and non-burnable. Another limitation of our habitat is water. Here we have one of the sinks. Crew botanist, Julio. Good to see you, man. Do you mind if we use this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, thank you. This is one of our half baths. We have a sink, we have some storage, and we have a shower. We have enough water to roughly take a shower once every 3 days. Oh, and our crew botanist again. Thank you. You mind if we use the restroom?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Just quickly, we can just peer at the bathroom. Fantastic. Now moving on. We have our executive officer. She's taking a look at our radios and GPS. How are we looking for tomorrow?
GPSs and walkies are almost fully charged for EVA.
Perfect. Now we perform extravehicular activities or EVAs almost once a day. And we have 2 sets of 3 people that go on these 3-hour excursions outside. And this is the room where we get changed into our spacesuits. Here, let's take a look. Our EVA suit, one of them here. And we have our crew engineer, Shravan.
Hey,
How's it looking for tomorrow?
It's looking pretty good. Just trying to make sure our astronauts get plenty of airflow for mission tomorrow. And it looks like we're in business.
Fantastic. These are the AC units right here.
Yep, so these fans provide ventilation so our astronauts get plenty of air out in the Martian environment.
Wonderful. And fantastic. And prior to leaving to the Martian environment, we have to go through this airlock. This is a room where we essentially decompress for roughly 5 minutes prior to leaving into the Martian environment. And that just about wraps it up for the first floor of the habitat. Here, we can walk upstairs and check out the second floor. Crew botanist, you're all over the place. And then, of course, we have to climb this ladder to get up to the top. Welcome to the second floor of the habitat. We spent a lot of time up here. Here we can see our bedrooms. This is the dining table. And then if we have a pan over this way, we see our kitchen. If I walk over this way, you can see we also spend some time here on our couches in the evening. Now we can spend a little bit more time talking about the bedrooms. If you kind of look over this way, we have 6 of them in total with doors. And we have a 7th up here for a loft, if we were to have a 7th crew member. This rotation we have 6. Here we have our dining table, where right now we're doing a lot of work. We have our executive officer, Shayna, and Alex, our health and safety officer. We have a big EVA tomorrow. Alex, how's it going?
So far so good, just plotting the coordinates on our map. Given the weather conditions, I think we'll be able to arrive safely.
Fantastic. Now we can also go ahead and take a look at one of the bedrooms. Pretty simple. In total, we have a bed, a desk, and a window. We have Julio, our crew botanist, here in the kitchen. Besides being a fantastic scientist and engineer, he's really quite the cook. Well, what are you making right now, Julio?
Pardon me?
Oh, you're fun.
Getting ready to make some stir fry.
Oh, fantastic. And here we have a beautiful refrigerator and freezer. We have plenty of rice, refrigerated water, and some beef. Shravan, are you looking at the water right now?
I am, yes.
How's it look?
Let's just say no more showers today.
He's joking. He's joking. Julio, do you mind if we look at your pantry?
Go ahead.
Fantastic. We have primarily dehydrated food because it reduces the amount of weight getting into Mars. And because we're halfway through our mission, we're starting to go through our supply, but Julio's doing a great job keeping us on track, making sure we have contingent food for the rest of the mission. Finally, we have an air purifier presented by Molecule. It's been able to keep us breathing nice and clean through our mission, and this is one of the ones that they provided us with. All right, And that about wraps it up for the second floor of our habitat. We can go ahead and move on to the greenhouse from here. Come on in. We're experiencing 40-mile-per-hour gusts today, so excuse the wind. Here it looks like we have our crew scientist and our crew botanist as well. By the way, much warmer in this room. Outside it's about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Here it's closer to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, so much better, much more conducive for plants. And speaking of plants, crew botanist here is working on an experiment where he's comparing the growth rates for peas between Earth and Martian soils. How's it going so far, Julio?
Looking good. Turns out that peas really like earth soil.
Has to be hypothesized. Perfect. Well, fantastic. We'll keep it short and sweet here in the green hab. Let's go back out into the wind and make our way to the science stone. Come on. We are back out here in the wind, in the tunnels. Let's make our way over to the science stone.
Hi there, Commander.
Executive Officer.
Come on in.
Come on in. One of my favorite buildings on the entire campus. Probably because of the view. Here, take a look. Crew safety officer, I'm jealous. This is really gorgeous. What a gorgeous day.
I love working here and just seeing the view every day while we're at work.
You're working on the Space Farmer Dream Kit. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, it's from Dream Up, which is a K-12 STEM education nonprofit. The Space Farmer Dream Kit is all about plant growth in space and teaching students the difference between the effect of gravity versus microgravity on plants. So we're demoing it here, and we'll take our findings back to our students on Earth.
Perfect. We'll check it back later in the week too. You might recall this from the second floor of the habitat. This is the molecule Air, one of the other products from Molecule. It's a donation from their brand, and it's really helping with our pandemic prevention. We are in the pandemic still, after all. Crew scientists.
Hi.
This is our -20 Celsius freezer, and these are some of our soil samples.
Yes, these are the soil samples that we collected while we were out on EVAs over the last few days. Our next step is for me and Shayna to reduce this down to 3 grams, so we're able to send a smaller sample back to the lab for analysis.
Fantastic.
From that, we'll learn all about the geologic composition of these samples, which, after all, comes from an analog terrain to Mars, and we'll be able to draw conclusions about the presence of extremophiles and life on Mars.
Well, that's enough for the Science Stone. That was fantastic. Really one of the best buildings on campus. Let's go make our way over the ramp. We're back in the tunnels one last time. We're on the way to the RAM, the repairs and assembly module. Let's go inside. Come on in. Crew engineer.
Hey, Commander, how's it going?
Hey, what are you working on?
Just prepping for some repairs we have to get done.
Oh, fantastic. We won't bother you. I'm just going to show some of the tools we have here in this workshop. It's really great to have this here. This, by the way, this is a retrofitted Chinook helicopter, and it's an amazing addition to MDRS. You can't bring tools with you, especially ones that are heavy, to Mars, and so they're already here for us. We have things like screwdrivers, scissors. Take a look, we have wrenches, we have cutters. It's really everything you would need. We have fasteners as well. We have our health and safety officer. How's it going?
Good. A little trouble with the wind.
Yeah, it's windy out there. Are you guys working on soldering?
Yeah, just a couple of repairs we need to get done. It's, you know, good to keep our skills sharp while we're in here.
Totally. Do you guys need any tools, by the way, while I'm here?
Oh, not at all. We actually have everything we need right here in this workshop.
Fantastic. Well, that will end us for the tour here today. We're glad to show you MDRS. It's really a fantastic opportunity to be here. Excited to see what the next week has in store for us, but for the time being, I'm gonna get out of here and go back to the house. Do you guys need anything?
No, we're great. Thank you, Commander.
All good.
Bye, guys.
We'll see you at dinner.
See ya.
Sometime in the next few decades, humans will leave this planet to live in another world.
That means that some people in our life can be the first Martians. How about that?
We're finding out a lot about how to explore Mars in our station. Over 1,000 people from over 40 countries have actually participated in one crew or another.
It's the grandest adventure I could possibly imagine. That is, for me, the most important reason why we should pursue the establishment of life on Mars.
If we go to Mars in our time, 200 years from now, there'll be new branches of human civilization on Mars.